magandang umaga sa ating lahat. Magandang mga babae at lalaki rin po kayo na nakikinig ngayon. And welcome to Living in an Anxious World. So may I ask if the slides are also ready? Yeah. Good morning that I can see the chat box. Hello to everyone right now. Okay, so you know what they say? When you look at your ears, it's shaped like this. We have one ear on the left, another ear on the right. When you put them together, it forms a heart. So I hope that we will all listen with our heart. And of course, I also want to start with a bit of a trigger warning. So some of the topics that we will be discussing can cause emotional distress to some of us. So I just want to be vulnerable and honor that space. If you feel like there are certain parts where medyo difficult for you, it's also okay if you need to like rest a bit. Hope and pray that this will be a blessing to everyone listening. Okay, so are the slides ready? There you go. Okay, so living in an anxious world. I want to start with this. Okay, so what does it mean to live in 2020 in this anxious world? Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this speech is called Choose Life, and this is the message that I want to impart to everyone. So let's start with the next slide. How do you choose L-I-F-E in 2020? So life for me is an acronym, and it's not just because my name in Spanish, Vida, means life, but also because a lot of us, even if we're going through life, sometimes the world that we are in is so dark. Sometimes it represents so much death in so many aspects of life. So how do we deal with that? Next slide, please. There. So I'm sharing here a quote from this movie called Trainspotting 2. For those who grew up in the 90s, you might be familiar with the Trainspotting 1 movie with Ewan McGregor. And it's really about drugs. It's really about the kind of life that your parents don't want you to enter into. So, but then he does this speech in 2017 where he says, choose life, choose Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and hope that someone somewhere cares. Choose looking up old flames, wishing you'd done it all differently, and choose watching history repeat itself. Choose your future. Choose reality TV, slut shaming, revenge porn. Choose a 0-hour contract, a 2-hour journey to work, and choose the same for your kids, only worse. And smother the pain with an unknown dose of an unknown drug made in somebody's kitchen. And then take a deep breath. You're an addict. So be addicted. Just be addicted to something else. Choose the ones you love. Choose your future. Choose life. And this is sort of the reality that we're in 2020, that a lot of people, the type of choices that they make, the type of lives that they've chosen for themselves may not be the thing that would really give them the deepest satisfaction. A lot of us also think that maybe addiction is just for those who go through drugs, go through alcohol, but there are many forms of addiction. And so you'll see a lot of that too. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's just to give you the first L, life in 2020 so far. Diba? Kaya nyo pa ba? Kapit muna ha. Okay, so ano naman nangyari sa 2020? So next slide. Okay, so in January, we started with the Taal volcano eruption, diba? So ang daming mga hashtag pray for the Philippines, hashtag we are a resilient nation, and people started wearing face masks dahil sa mga ashfall from the Taal volcano. And then in February, yan, if you can see from the picture, di ba, cute-cute niya, pero meron palang African swine fever outbreak. So a lot of the pork and livestock producers went bankrupt kasi yung buong population ng mga alaga nila namatay. Okay, so I know for people who are in Bulacan, they have a lot of the livestock industry and people really suffered because of that. In March, I wanted to share this picture with the really exhausted healthcare workers. And this is a photo from PGH. So kaway-kaway sa mga taga-PGH na kasama natin sa Victory Katipunan and all those in the healthcare industry who are listening right now. Of course, hindi ko na rin na-share na nung January, di ba, namatay si Kobe Bryant with his daughter, and that was also a very tragic thing at the start of the year. But then also there are things that happened, like in April, the Supreme Court, finally, for the first time, they held a special en banc session online. And this one, the reality of people doing Zoom, even what we're doing right now, connecting on a digital level, who would have thought na sina lolo at lola mo, makakasama mo online, matututo silang mag-Facebook, matututo silang mag-chat, matututo silang mag-share ng mga meme. And that's part of the things that started happening this year. Next slide, please. Okay, so also in May, I know there are a lot of people in our Victory family who are working for ABS-CBN. Some of my friends in our Victory group, they also lost their jobs because of the ABS-CBN issue. So even if, as you can see, this is a photo of Angel Locsin saying that, you know, she wants people to give them a chance to be better, but still the franchise was not renewed. Let me also state for the record that these represent my views alone and not the Department of Foreign Affairs. So I'm speaking in my personal capacity and not the official stand of my office. Okay, so in June, here's a photo of the United Nations Human Rights Council. So yun ang itsura niyan. And here they issued a resolution to investigate the human rights situation in the Philippines. So can you imagine the different UN member countries trying to get into your country and find out what's really happening to the peace and order situation that our government is facing right now. So there are also a lot of things that happened in July, August, September, and even this October. So alam ko, ramdam na ramdam niyo yan na people right now are really going through a lot of uncertainty. The unemployment rate is the highest, but still, there are other things that are happening behind the scenes. So next slide, please. Yan. So, most of us, pag tinanong tayo, kumusta ka na? Yan. So, sabihin mo lang, I'm fine. Really, I'm fine. Ganun. So, all of us really are in this situation where pag tinatanong ka kung ano na ba talaga nangyayari sa'yo? Kumusta ka na ba talaga? And sometimes our default reaction is, I'm fine. So, next slide. Oh, okay lang ako. Ganon. Sabi ni El. So, di ba? So, this is the meme. And I'm sure this is relatable to a lot of us. So around the world, you will see different fires, not just the Australian bushfires, but also as a metaphor in the kind of lives that we have. Diba? Na parang there, you're drinking your coffee. Kung hindi man Starbucks, yung sa bahay na lang kasi hindi ka naman makalabas, especially kung minor ka. And then you will just say na, yeah, you know, with all those things that happened from January to October 2020, diba? Na parang okay lang, everything's burning right now. Tapos, I'm just gonna drink my coffee here. Things are going to be okay. But actually, in the last frame of the I'm fine dog, you know, it's not okay, right? So I'm sure this is relatable to everyone listening right now. Next slide, please. Yeah, and actually, this is a big mood for 2020, anxiety blob 2020. So it's really what we are facing at this point in time. That some days I don't give it my best. I know it's hard to say it for someone who's in a job that requires you to always put on the perfect face, always be performance level, always have a permanent plastered on positive attitude because of the nature of your work. So sometimes I really can't. You know, I really have the vulnerability to say that I'm trying my best, I'm trying to give it, but sometimes I can only manage to give some, you know, and that's a boundary that people need to be able to share. That sometimes you're at this stage that we're living in a global pandemic where you're still trying, you're still here, and that's still something that you may not be feeling like you're 100%, but at least you're out there, you're doing something, you're trying to do something. And it's also a reflection of what's happening with the Philippine government situation, right? Sometimes when we look at the news, we always say, ay nako, ang Pilipinas, ang hirap mong mahalin. Minsan, pag titingnan mo yung nangyayari, when you look at your Google front page and it's all traumatic situations, it's all things that make you feel like it's a source of national shame. But this is also the year where the government has also done a lot of reforms internally. With the Department of Foreign Affairs, for the first time, we have entered into treaty negotiations in an online capacity. Whereas before, we would spend millions of pesos traveling and trying to settle and put a lot of disputes to rest through a face-to-face interaction, but now we're actually able to do it online. For the first time in history, we're able to create green lanes for seafarers to be able to come home. We were able to repatriate yung mga nanay at tatay ninyo na mga OFWs, the people who are making a way to go to the airport and make sure that they come home safe. These are the people from the Department of Foreign Affairs. People who are making sure that the criminals will be arrested no matter where they are, especially at a time that interconnectivity is also causing a lot of darkness in the online lives of people. So now we're able to prosecute these cases using the internet by presenting digital evidence. Also, what people don't see behind the scenes there. So tama yon, the next slide, diba? This is the year that workplaces actually allowed work from home. So even for, before they would always say, nako, that's a security risk. Meron kaming parang documents na may secret na nakapatong sa ibabaw, or meron nakalagay extremely confidential, highly urgent. But now we're able to do this digitally. And now the practice of law, I'm happy to share that behind the scenes, we've been working on making sure that online video conferencing happens, not just in Philippine courts, but also in courts all over the world, also in our Philippine embassies and consulates. Dati rin, diplomats used to have to struggle with the hard copy versions of documents, but now we're able to negotiate with our foreign counterparts for better economic agreements, better political agreements, for better cultural arrangements. Kaya ngayon, di ba, sino nakanood ng Hamilton online, di ba? So people are producing a lot of content, a lot of movies and films that they're showing now. So those things weren't possible before this lockdown happened. If you look at the museums also, there's a National Museum virtual tour. There's a lot of free scrid publications. There's a lot of, yes, people who are enjoying online theater. Yeah, yung mga fans of online Broadway. Yes, let's do this. And so I'm really grateful. So I showed another anxiety blob meme. So thank you to the artist who made that. I'm grateful for friends who live in my computer. And even if there's no substitute to physical space and connecting on a personal level, but still we can bond and be weird together without leaving the houses. So a lot of times you've seen a lot of memes where the lawyers are in full corporate attire, naka-barong, naka-blazer sa taas, pero naka-shorts, naka-leggings, ganon, and that's okay. So this kind of digital transformation is also making space for families. Diba? So sino dito, first time nyo na sumama na kayo na nag-dinner kayo in one space na magkakasama kayo, na without your gadgets kasi this is your time to be together. Sino dito, this is the first time that your family actually saw na ganyan ka pala sa mga online class. Or like my family, this is the first time that they're seeing me na ganito pala ako pag hearing, yung mga sumisigaw na, objection, Your Honor! So doing that in my living room is something that my family never thought that they would observe, di ba? So yun, yung mga comments like, ay, maingay ka pala sa school, or like, wala ng mga noisy girls, lahat kayo noisy unless i-mute kayo ni teacher. So that's another positive thing that we can see, that amidst all the darkness that you're seeing, when you say, I'm fine, there are so many nuanced layers of saying, I'm fine, but the important thing is for us to see, what do you mean when you say, I'm fine, on a deeper level? Next slide, please. There. So, which brings me to this message. So we've said letter L, life. I is I'm fine. F is fighting for authenticity. So when you say I'm fine, okay lang ako, are you connecting with your authentic self? Are you being honest on that level? Are you really exploring inside you what's really going on? Okay, so next slide. So let me share this story. Medyo kinakabahan din ako. Pero just to share with you my past. So when I was a student in UPLB, I felt I was really, really lost. 20 years ago, I'm probably old enough to be your mom. And this super throwback was sent by my other friend, who was also sobrang aktivista. So every time na may protesta, I would be on top of a jeep, may hawak na megaphone, sumisigaw ng kung anong slogan natin for that day or for that specific issue. So before the term woke was popular, so that was the generation where being woke meant, yeah, yung mga mukhang di naliligo, mga may punit na maong, naka-t-shirt na kung ano. And most of the time, I felt na, you know, I was living a life where I felt that social justice was really my mission in life. In fact, I came from a school that emphasized a lot of performance, a lot of excellence academically. But then reaching university, I felt that my old patterns weren't possible. So I came from a school where we were all branded gifted children, and the pressure was so bad because even if they try to indoctrinate you that you're destined for greatness, you're the best, you're the cream of the crop. But then you end up setting unrealistic goals, and when you don't reach it, it reached a point where you become so disappointed if you get average grades. There are people in my batch who actually had suicide attempts because naka 98 sila sa exam instead of 100, kulang ng 2 points. There are people in my class who also suffer because of all the pressure put on them, and the way that they try to self-medicate their pain away is getting into alcohol, getting into drugs, getting into an average kind of life instead of excelling, instead of really maximizing their full potential. And and for me, that was also a very difficult struggle because actually the other I for me stands for intellectual pride. So I struggled a lot with feeling like I could do everything on my own. I struggled a lot with thinking that I didn't need other people. Pag may group work, ako yung groupmate na, sige, I'll take over, tutulungan ko na kayong lahat. Sige, parang baka pangit yung trabaho ninyo eh, so ako na lang gagawa. May gana tendency. Or sometimes, you actually, it was a season in my life where I would even go to church and attend these seminars because I wanted to talk to the pastor and ask difficult questions. And because of this, my entire block, whom I would invite when I was in BS Applied Physics in UPLB, would also ask these difficult questions. And when we felt that we are not able to get satisfied with the kind of answers that we wanted to hear, so most of us would really question if there was really a legit way of interpreting religion, because it's something that we felt on an intellectual level we weren't satisfied. So that sort of prideful nature prevented us from really also connecting and understanding and having the humility to know that there are people out there who can give and contribute and feed into your life, and you don't really have to do all of this alone. So next slide, please. Yeah, so here's a picture that that attitude of being prideful was something that I brought along even when I went into law school. So this one is a photo from the Dominican Republic, from the Caribbean. And we were there for a moot court competition to represent the Philippines in the World Trade Organization. You know, it's like a debate, parang gathering ng mga nerds, ganon. And even at that time, I felt like, you know, I was real like, you know, upset the status quo. I want to change the system, you know, like we shouldn't be satisfied with things as they are. We should always change everything. But ultimately, I knew that change should start with you. It was a time that I felt um, that I was really going through woundedness, that I was trying to cover up in my own capacity. I was so prideful that I felt na ako kakayanin ko to. Hindi ko kailangan ng help ng ibang tao. Hindi ko kailangan kasi team captain ako ng moot court team. My grades were okay. I've never failed a subject in my entire life in law school. And even if my UPLB time was really almost always on the verge of getting kicked out, I felt like this time around, nung nasa law school na ako, kayang-kaya ko na to. So, next slide, please. I really felt na even if on the surface I was gathering achievements, accomplishments, I had a trophy altar, and it's basically like the top of my piano where my mom puts the medals, trophies, all those achievements. But all those were just trying to fill the void in my heart. I was so empty inside, and I just knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. At that time, I didn't know what it meant to pray for the government, because for me, I was so disappointed with how the government was working. So when I became a lawyer, next slide, please. Okay, so while I was reviewing for the bar in the library, I just was so surprised that someone reached out to me and shared with me that, you know what, don't destroy your life like this. If you feel like you can do it alone, you can't. Because with humility and fear of the Lord come riches and honor and life. And I later learned that was Proverbs 22:4. That became a big wake up call for me because when I was reviewing for the bar, and I hope people will also be encouraged. The first time that I took the bar exam, I was so arrogant. In 2010, I felt like it was so easy. I went in at 9 o'clock and then I left at 10 a.m., even if it was supposed to be until 12 o'clock. I felt like, pakape-kape ako, pa-breakfast, tapos pinagtatawanan ko yung mga kabatch ko na hindi pa sila tapos mag-bar exam. At that time also, it was a very difficult time because my father died 2 months before the bar exam. And then my grandmother died 2 weeks before. So ang hirap pala mag-review sa punerarya, di ba? Parang dala-dala ko yung mga reviewers ko. Tapos surrounded ka ng mga corona ng bulaklak. Tapos ang daming mga lumalapit, nagko-condolence. Pero kailangan mo mag-aral. And then at the time, because I was so full of my own self-hatred and my own pride, my plan was after I did scholarship at Spain at Universitat de Barcelona, I wasn't planning to come back. I wanted to work for a top-tier law firm. I wanted to take the New York bar. I wanted to be an excellent professional based on my own definition of what being excellent was. But then God also used that moment to humble me. I was informed that I failed the 2010 bar exam. At the time that I felt that I was ultra confident, akala ko, joke pa ako sa mga tao na actually, parang feeling ko top-notcher ako ng bar na yan kasi madali eh. Pero when I failed that exam, I felt so much shame. I felt that that sort of deep brokenness that exposed that on my own, I really can't do anything. I was repressing a lot of that pain with performance. I was repressing a lot of that pain with my own self-image of what being good was. But I wasn't being my authentic self. I wasn't being real, that I should bring my own brokenness to the cross of Jesus Christ because only what's done for Christ will last. All those earthly crowns, all those trophies on the altar, all those medals are worth nothing if it's not for the glory of Jesus Christ. I also learned that I was addicted to my work. And remember the first quote about addiction. Sometimes your academic performance, your earthly accomplishments, your being good in the eyes of the world, you're being perfect in the definition of what the world says, can be an addiction. And I knew that the only way to break those addictive patterns, even at the point when I felt so hopeless and beyond recovery, was only bringing it to the cross of Jesus Christ. Next slide, please. Okay, so can we watch the video? This is Cassie's story. Thank you.
It's really hard. It's like I was thinking that I want to die because of this pain, but I can't. When first time my recruiter telling me that Manila is very nice, he said, so I can wear a nice clothes, and then he taking care of me. He told me that he can help me to reach all my dreams. First time in Manila, it was very happy because there's a lot of building. You wear nice clothes, you have your own money, you can stay in a nice house. So Manila is very nice compared to my place. We are 6 victims inside of the house of my recruiter. My recruiter hurt me every day when I do something bad that he don't like because he want every day, I need to follow him, but if I don't follow him, he's going to hurt me, just punk me, slap me in the face in front of the people. I really want to kill him. I really want to die that time, but I can't. It's feel very lonely for me because I was very far from my family and I can't tell them what happened to me because I was very scared. When they rescued us, it made me heal all the pain. It is in my second home I realized everything, that you don't need to lose hope. If I see or if I hear or there is a victim of human trafficking like us, I just want her to comfort her, help her to move forward and just fight for your rights, because that's the start where I stand now.
Okay, so thank you very much for that video, and we can resume the next slide. But that's also one of the advocacies that I'm supporting, International Justice Mission, which is an organization that I joined after I passed the bar exam and after working for a certain government office. And that sort of life, looking at Cassie and what her experience is something that people around the world experience now, especially that we're all on pandemic lockdown. And the cases of child cyber sex trafficking or online sexual exploitation of children is actually rising. And being with Cassie made me understand what it meant to be a lawyer who will really seek justice, who will really speak the truth with love, who will really be able to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, who will defend the rights of the poor and the needy. That it's not just my old life that should define me, but like Cassie, there are people like us who can actually be extra. So that's my last E, being extra, which goes into going the extra mile, also being extra in terms of extra grace required and really extending more grace to each other, being extra patient with other people that we deal with, and being patient most of all with yourself. Because that same patience was what I experienced from my own small group leaders. So I told you about UPLB, and at that time, I met this group of people who called themselves, they were part of Youth on Fire. And I thought it was a concert. So, of course, I brought my blockmates kasi, oy, pare, banda, di ba? Youth jam yan. And when I got there, apparently, it was a youth service. And despite my initial shock that it was actually a Christian gathering at the time that I felt I did not believe in God, I met these girls who were so patient with me na they would really go to my dorm, even if during the times na mag-a-attend ako ng small group meeting namin ng mga early days, attend ako lasing, attend ako na puyat kasi galing sa pagdidikit ng mga poster ng mga aktivista do sa mga dingding ng building sa UP. But they still stuck it out with me. So next slide, please. There. And all through these years, I saw that they were so patient in a way that reminded me that I should not conform with any pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. And this is where I learned that, yes, indeed, the kind of lawyer that I wanted to be was to prove that when you rescue thousands, protect millions, you want to prove that justice for the poor is possible. So, you know, naka-smile pero naka-bulletproof vest. And that's the kind of life that we deal with, that life in 2020 may feel like it's such a battle, but you know that the ultimate bulletproof vest that you have is your deeper relationship with God, because that's what being authentic is. Knowing your true self, knowing that your true self can only be connected to the King of Kings when you're honest and authentic with Him. He can take your pain, He can take your trauma, He can take whatever addiction that you're struggling with, and He can be the one to break up that bondage. So honestly, before I joined Victory, I had never opened up to anyone about my double life, you know, the addiction of hiding behind the mask of perfection, having all those earthly accomplishments. But at the same time, within me, I felt so alone. I felt so broken. And I was self-medicating that with unhealthy things. So like yung sa gifted child starter pack that I showed, there was a lot of things that I did when I was a young person that I'm not proud of. There's a lot of things that I felt like up to now, I'm facing the consequences of living that sort of life that was very unhealthy. Um, I also felt so disconnected with the need to be honest because I didn't want to share what I was feeling. I was so afraid na baka ma-judge ako. I was so afraid na pagtawanan ako. Na once I open up my heart, I would not be able to handle it if all the feelings would come out. And I was also in denial ultimately that that sort of work addiction, performance addiction was wrong. Okay, so next slide, please. There. So, which brought me to 2011. Finally, God, in His grace, was able to humble me enough for me to realize that the truth is the most important thing for you to know is your relationship with Him. And when I got that truth planted deep into my heart, that's when I started taking my bar exam round two seriously. That's also the time when I realized that even as a single mother, even in the kind of difficult life challenges that we're facing right now, I knew that God is able to turn around whatever the enemy meant for evil and turn it towards His beautiful destiny for your life. Next slide, please. So here I'm showing a picture of the Foreign Service exam, the graduation of our cadetship program. So the FSO exam, after you pass it, you actually go through 6 months of like a diplomat boot camp. And it's really a time where really it's like joining the military. And the thing is, the kind of training that you receive would enable you to build bridges, would enable you to make connections with different countries, and at the same time for you to also make sure that you protect the interests of Filipinos all over the world. So that's really a testament of God's grace in my life because when I was preparing for the exam, I had no international relations background. I had no pol-sci background. Di ba, applied physics nga ako nung college, tapos nag-development communication. So I really felt I was the least of my batch. Out of 527 people there, I felt I was the most unprepared, especially because as a mom, the night before every exam, I would be helping my child with homework. I was still a full-time litigator handling cases like Cassie's. And I really didn't know that I would actually pass until God really made a way for me. So I was so amazed that during the formal dinner, the question that I picked out, there's a Binibining Pilipinas kind of portion na you pick a question from a fishbowl and then you answer it within 2 minutes. And who would have known that at the time that I was studying Norwegian language using Duolingo lang para libre, the question was, you are the ambassador to Oslo, Norway, and you're supposed to give a speech to Filipino seafarers. When I saw that, I knew, God, this is from you. There's no way that out of the 27 people who were taking the formal dinner speeches in that exam, that this particular topic would be given to me. So I gave that speech, and I saw how the people in the room, their eyes lit up because I wanted to show them that no matter how difficult your circumstances are, no matter how much the odds are stacked against you, if that is God's will for your life and you align yourself to that will, God will make a way for you. So even all throughout the 6 month military style diplomat boot camp process that we went through, I saw God's grace moving in my life because ultimately it's about knowing that with humility and fear of the Lord come riches and honor and life. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so choosing life. So first we started out with life in 2020 so far, and 2020 is not over yet. May November pa, may December pa, and I know that God can also move in the coming months and really change everything that has happened during the past few months. Second is I'm fine and other lies that we tell ourselves. But I'm fine would actually lead us to the challenge for number three, to fight for authenticity, knowing your true self, humbling yourself enough to know that you are broken, you are alone, but God is there with you. That even with whatever you're feeling at that point, even with whatever addictions that you feel like you are secretly destroying your life with, ultimately, when we die to self and we renounce those things that are keeping us down, we know that God will be the one to come through for us. That's why it leads me to number 4, extra. So when you ask who's being extra, sometimes being extra is like such a negative term, right? But being extra for me means being extra in terms of going the extra mile, having extra patience, and extra grace that you need to extend to other people, and also grace to yourself, because that is God's grace moving in your life. Next slide, please. Yeah, and actually, the nicer definition for life for me is this: keep calm and live life, live in faith every day. And that's what keeps me awake and alive and excited, even with all the things that are happening in 2020. Even if being a diplomat at such a time as this is such a difficult job, but I know that God is able to use that. God is able to use every single thing that you suffered from, every single pain, every single addiction that you struggled with, to be able to reach out and tell people that it's okay to be authentic, to be real with me, because we went through that too. Because we know how painful it is, we know how difficult it is, and we know how God was able to change the situation and turn it all around. So I just hope and pray that for all of you listening to me right now, don't forget to LIFE, live in faith every day. That when you're tempted to say, I'm fine, okay lang ako, that you can ask yourself, is this your true self? Are you being authentic? Are you being real right now? Every time that you're tempted to say, wala na in 2020, parang cancel 2020, it's over. Parang ano, can I call your manager and return this year, 2020? But also know that God is able to redeem all the remaining months that we have. And finally, I just challenge you all to be extra in every way that you can. Just be extra patient with people, be extra compassionate, and most of all, be extra loving. Next slide, please. I also want to remind you all that go to the Lord and see what His mission is for your life. So for me, the verse that He gave was Proverbs 31, 8 to 9, to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy. For all those who are from the best schools who are listening to me right now, speak up and use your voice to defend those who cannot speak for themselves, for the poor and the needy, for the people who need you to speak up for them, especially since your education was paid for by every single peso from the taxpayers who are working so hard to make sure that you have the best education possible in this world. Next slide, please. There. And of course, yes, let's end with anxiety blob. So this one, for all those listening right now, I know this is hard. It's a Saturday morning. Maybe you're still puyat from doing schoolwork last night, or like this is the time that you're planning out, like, am I gonna have a Zoom party with my friends in the evening? Or maybe you just feel like you just don't want to get out of your room, and it just so happened that you watched this video. I know that there are no coincidences, there are no accidents, that this moment was really for you to hear this, that maybe if you're full of fear and despair, or you just feel nothingness, you feel like there's just a void in your heart, please just wait, because I know that you are valid and you matter. And no matter where you are, no matter how you're feeling right now, I love you, and just please stay. And I hope that this presentation was able to speak into your heart and ultimately choose life, because that is what God wants for all of us. Thank you very much, and good morning to all.
Wow.
All right. Thank you.
Palakpakan naman
Thank you.
natin.
Thank you. Come on, guys.
Thank
Clap for
you, Atty.
hands.
Vida.
Show your love in the comments, chat
Yes.
box. Yun.
Palakpakan naman
Thank you.
natin si Atty. Vida. Ayan.
Woo!
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Ngayon, we'll proceed to our question and answer.
Mhm.
So if you have questions for Atty. Vida, you may send it directly to the Lakbay Q&A bot.
Mhm.
Okay? So makikita
There
nyo
it is.
dyan, Lakbay Q&A bot. Yan.
Tama.
Please send a message to that bot account.
Yes.
Ayan. And
Nakakatawa
then,
kasi bot account pero may profile picture. Okay.
Ito
Sino
na
magbasa
po.
ng first question? Ikaw ba?
Meron na pong
Okay.
first question, attorney.
Hmm.
How do you manage those times where you're not at your best self, but you still have to show up to do work, ACADS, or attend classes?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that question. Well, it's very difficult. I agree, and I actually have to really surrender to the Lord. As in, like, literally, the first thing that I do is iiyak talaga ako kay God na, Lord, kaya ko ba to? Parang, alam mo yun na, the deadline is coming. I feel like I'm not in my best shape, best mental state, best performance level. And really, that's how I begin. I spend a few minutes with my quiet time alone with God. And then after that moment, I have to be honest and really tell my boss, like, listen, ma'am, this is what's going on, and I want to assure you that I don't want my personal life to destroy my professional life, but I also have to say na at this moment, I need to set this boundary na I need this space to be with my child, or I need this space to rest at this point. And then I also, of course, assure her na babawi po ako. Like, mamaya, I will turn in kung ano man yung kailangan i-present, or like, can I just give it to you tomorrow? But being honest enough with your boss or with your teacher to engage in that conversation, na instead of like tinatakpan mo lang, or instead of kino-cover up mo lang kung ano yung totoong nangyayari, mahalaga na maging honest ka and i-communicate mo na you're really not 100% at this point. And that's okay, because that single day, a single bad day, is not a bad life. It's just one day out of 365, and there's so much more that you can do. Thanks.
Wow, a single bad day is not a bad life. Woo!
Yes.
Attorney Vida, what you mean is that you need to be honest with God first, and then with yourself, and then with your boss. Yun po yung
Yeah.
honesty is the best
The best policy.
So be honest. Be honest.
That's right. Okay, we have another question. Attorney Vida, how do you cope or overcome? How do you cope with or overcome intellectual pride? Oh.
Yeah, my gosh, that's a difficult question. On your own, you can't, really. Kung susuluhin mo lang na parang, ekis yan, right? But you have to be able to have the humility to know that you need people to be accountable to. You need to confess it before the Lord. You really need to ask forgiveness and really repent na, Lord, napaka-prideful ng mga sinabi ko, ng mga ginawa ko. If there are people who were hurt because of your intellectual pride, it's a huge challenge to actually reach out to them. So like, for example, when I went to UPLB for the Outstanding Alumni Award, and they gave me time to speak sa College of DevCom, and I thought, Lord, this is it. This is the moment that I want to apologize to my teachers. Na I will really humble myself and say, sorry, napaka-arrogante kong bata. Nung estudyante ako, I was so mayabang and prideful, and being able to swallow that intellectual pride within and confess it to the Lord and say, like, Jesus, I want to point everything back to you. Ito, hindi ako to. Hindi to for my own self-fulfillment, hindi to pampahaba ng CV ko. Pero parang knowing na I want to point everyone back to God with the things that I do. And also the same, being honest enough to talk to the people who were hurt and tell them and communicate directly to them na I'm really sorry that my intellectually prideful words or acts were painful to you, because I want to make it up to you. I want to rectify the situation and let God be the one to heal the wounding that I caused to other people because of those words. It's not easy. Syempre, may iyakan portion talaga yan, di ba? And also, not everyone will receive the message in the way that you expect it. But at least you know within your heart that you were able to allow God into those dark places that you don't normally want to show people, that you allowed God to get into that space that you keep hidden from others. Because that's what it is to be humble, to know that on your own, hindi mo kakayanin talaga. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you
All
for that,
right.
Attorney Vida.
Mhm.
Actually, marami pa po tayong questions, pero yan. Sige, tuloy lang natin, no?
Yes,
Ang
as much
gaganda
as we
po kasi
can.
ng questions eh.
Mhm.
Ito, super relate sa lahat sa atin dito.
Yes.
How are you able to separate your sense of worth from your work or your productivity? It's something I am struggling with. That's the question.
Sad face.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a relevant question. And in fact, I also struggled with that too, na parang yung time na the first time that I lost a case. And this one parang I felt parang, 81 girls were trafficked. Tapos sabi ni judge, insufficient evidence. Talagang parang halos 1 week ako na gusto ko mag-vacation leave at magbukbok sa bahay kasi natalo ako doon sa case. But it goes into knowing your identity, that who are you as a child of God, that you're not just defined by the things on paper or by the number of check marks that you put in your to-do list or that numerical figure that comes out in your transcript of records. But knowing that ultimately your identity is placed in your relationship with Jesus Christ, your identity is knowing that you're a child of the King. And when I had to accept that reality na oo nga no, na parang no matter what's going on in my external life, no matter what's going on in my right here, right now, you have to look at the eternal perspective na, eto Lord, sige, natalo ako dun sa kaso na to, bagsak ako dun sa particular exam na to, bagsak ako sa ganitong life issue. But also knowing na Lord, I'm just gonna lay it down at your feet and allowing you to turn it around. Allowing you na, sige Lord, kung ano man yung mga kinuha sa akin, ano yung nawala sa akin, I know that you will be the one to give me a double portion to restore whatever was taken away from me, whatever was lost during that day. And mahirap yun, I understand na people have different ways of processing it. People react to trauma and pain differently, and that's also okay. So just be patient with yourself na wag mong madaliin, hindi naman siya overnight, di ba? Si Elijah nga di ba? Parang may time na he had to have the angel minister to him and tell him, oh, mag-rest ka muna, bigyan kita ng food, magpahinga ka muna. Because sometimes, before you go back into the battle, when you go through a failure, you really need that time alone with God to encounter Him on a deeper level. And it's something that even now, I still continue to do.
Wow.
Wow. Thank you po,
Actually,
thank you.
thank you. Ang naalala ko, Ian, yung isang sinabi from the Freshman Summit, na very related yung failure is an event, not a person.
Yeah,
Something good to remember. Okay,
And
I think we're down. Yes, Ian.
you are not a human doing. You're a human being.
Tama.
Yeah.
Not
Alala ko
defined
yan.
by the things you do. All right, we're down to our last two questions. Okay, Attorney Vida, how do you convince yourself to rest when you feel like you need to, but you still have a lot of schoolwork to do? Very relatable question.
Oo nga Ako rin guilty ako dyan na mahilig mag-overtime, magtrabaho ng trabaho to be overproductive. But also it goes into honoring Sabbath rest, di ba? A lot of people, they say na parang, honor the Sabbath day, parang that's so Old Testament. Pero actually, Sabbath rest also means you're guarding that space na, Lord, alam ko na kung pagurin ko yung sarili ko, tapos magkasakit ako, baba immune system ko, magka-COVID pa ako, it's also not honoring to you. So parang it's also a way of honoring your body as the temple of the Holy Spirit and disciplining yourself na in your search for perfection, in your search for being ultra productive, it's also a lie of the enemy, di ba? Na parang when you force yourself na parang, oh, my value and worth is based on the number of outputs na nailabas ko. But actually, it's something that you need to discipline yourself then. And I know na God wants me to rest. I shouldn't feel guilt for self-care. And whatever thing that's like niggling at the back of your mind, making you feel anxious or nervous about not being able to perform, it's like the story of Paul and the thorn in his flesh. Di ba? Na parang he's saying na, in my former office, we are all required to go see a counselor to process it and sort of to destigmatize and normalize the need for talking to a mental health professional. And that's the thing that the counselor told me na what you're experiencing right now, it's like Apostle Paul's thorn in the flesh, reminding you to be dependent on God. So you will not be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and so prideful to know na, Lord, this thorn in my flesh, this excessive need to be hyper-productive at the time that we're in a global pandemic is something that is am I offering to you? Na parang, Lord, whatever pain that I'm experiencing because of that is something that I know will keep me dependent on you. And for you as well, it's okay to set a timer to give yourself breaks. From a practical perspective, diba? Na whatever it is that you need to rest, guard that space. And like communicate with the people around you, family man yun, group mates man yun, org mates man yun, and tell them that like, this is my time of Sabbath rest. And I want to honor that time with God to really refresh, renew, and reconnect. Because when you take care of yourself, that's when you can take care of other people better. When you take care of yourself, that's when you can take care of your homework, your school stuff, your other projects. And you will be more effective in the long run.
Wow. Thank you so much, Attorney Vida. When you take care of yourself, you can take care of others.
Nice.
Wow.
It's good. It's good.
Sorry,
Wow. Mood. Again, thank you po. Thank you so much, Attorney. Please give a hand for Attorney Vida. Ayan. Magpasalamat tayo for a wonderful first session. Thank you po.